became aware of the cardiac risk in the Young Charity when I lost my only son Aaron at the age of 23. Suddenly, hadn't been ill. So it was obviously a huge shock, what had gone wrong, what had happened. And we were directed to the charity by the coroner. We didn't find out the cause of death until 2 months after losing Aaron. And when we were told he'd got a heart defect, we were really, really shocked because he'd shown no symptoms whatsoever. So it took me a good 12, 18 months before I actually contacted the charity. I was in a really dark place for 12, 18 months. If I got out of bed, that was an achievement. And like any other parent that's lost a child, it's a really dark, lonely place to be. And only another parent that's been through a similar thing would identify with how I was feeling. I tried to have counselling, but that didn't work for me. I found that talking to other parents who'd been through a similar situation helped more because they actually got it, they understood it. And then I started to look at the website. It was probably about 18 months after losing Aaron. And I was really shocked at the statistics. At least 12 young people were losing their lives every single week to undetected heart defects, and 80% of those had no symptoms whatsoever. And then the more I spoke to the cardiologists and the CRY staff, what was even more shocking was that a simple ECG could save those lives. So after several conversations and meetings with CRY, I made the decision to set up a memorial fund, and that is ring-fenced within the CRY charity. And we set off fundraising. So our first fundraiser was Holly and Aaron's girlfriend at the time, Abby. They did a bike ride in the Lake District, which is where Aaron was actually born, and raised over £2,500 one Sunday afternoon. That was in 2013. And then our biggest fundraiser then after that was a skydive. So I signed my husband up because I've actually already done it myself. So I signed my husband up because he needed to experience that. So along with Gary, there was a very close friend of ours, Becky, and 8 of Aaron's friends, close friends, and we raised over £23,000 one afternoon. So I thought, oh, this is easy. So yeah, that set us off then. Our family, friends, and Aaron's close friends, who do most of the crazy fundraising events. We've raised just under £400,000 so far. Every single penny goes into Aaron's Memorial Fund. It's not paid for anything, it's not used for anything else, only screening. So each screening day costs £5,000, where 100 young adults are screened between the ages of 14 and 35. And today we've screened just under 4,000 young adults. 133 have been referred from those 4,000 with abnormalities. The thing is, you don't get to know the end story because of data protection unless those families contact you. And one of those, Charlotte, who's local, she had her heart transplant 3 years ago. It was Charlotte's mum contacted me, and Charlotte had been unwell for several years. But when she'd gone to university, she'd got worse. Struggled to get out of bed to get to her lectures. And they gave her all sorts of diagnoses, the doctor. So her mum said that she felt there was more to it and could she come and get checked. But that particular screening at the Grange in Hertford, we were fully booked, but something made me say, yes, come along. So she came along and they picked it up, and then she was referred for further testing, and went on to have her heart transplant at Wythenshawe. When I contacted the charity and realised that, you know, a simple ECG could save a child's life, I don't know, I just woke up one morning and I really did and just thought, I've got to do something. And it was more about keeping Aaron's memory alive. And I think any parent who's lost a child, that's your biggest fear, that people will forget. And I didn't want people to forget. So I wanted to do something positive in Aaron's memory. And if it was just to save one person's life, but obviously the more people that cry a finding, the more I feel I have to do. Knowing that there's so many people out there that haven't been screened and that can be saved. I always say I do have the best group of friends. And the more that people get to hear about what I'm doing, people will phone me up and say, oh, I'm doing a fundraising event in 3 weeks to raise money for you. Or they'll, you know, private message me and say, oh, we've been raising money and we've got a cheque for X thousands of pounds. And I'm just like, God. So yes, but I've been very lucky that I'm one of the chosen charities for JD Sports. Okay. So they have a foundation. So they donate to Aaron's Memorial Fund every year. Nice. So, you know, I'm very, very fortunate to have that. And some of the money that they donate, I also fund the screening of elite athletes with the English Institute of Sport. Wow. So I've been doing that since 2018. Amazing. So I funded them to be screened before they went to the games this summer. Still don't know who nominated me. Wow. And I received a phone call from somebody at ITV, I think his name was Ian Barber, to tell me that I'd been shortlisted and that they were coming to film me at home. Oh my God. So the lovely Victoria Grimes came to the house and filmed me. And then obviously everybody saw it was on the TV. They sort of put it over 4 nights. And then on the Friday, they announced who the winner is. And people used to say to me, so you knew you'd won? I had no idea. So on that actual Friday that they were announcing the winner, when I'd watched previous years, they'd always gone to a restaurant or the person's workplace to surprise them. And Gary was actually going away on the Saturday on his annual bike ride to Scotland. And he said, oh, we'll go out for lunch on the Friday. And we went to 32 actually, in Sarpley. And I thought, but nothing happened. So I thought, well, it's definitely not me. So I went home. I never thought about Gary getting me out of the house. So unbeknownst to me, I found out later that ITV were actually in our garden testing that, you know, everything was going to work, because the signal can be really bad at times. So they were actually in our back garden. You know, like when you look back, because Gary got up twice to go to the toilet, I'm thinking, what? So he was on the phone in the toilet. So he was on the phone in the toilet and they'd phoned to say, right, you're clear to go home, sort of thing. So went home, didn't think anything of it. And then Holly and Dale turned up, which is unusual on a Friday when Otis has been at nursery, because usually he's absolutely exhausted. And I was like, what are you doing here? And they said, oh, we've just nipped to Cheshire Road, so we thought we'd call in on the way back. But I honestly didn't think anything of it. So obviously we're all sat in the conservatory and Gary put it on. And I remember Holly's partner Dale saying, who do you think's won this? And I said, oh, I think it's there was a guy that had run from different football clubs. I think he's won this. That's amazing what he's done. So we're all sat there watching. And then Victoria Grimes appears. She's actually, and honestly, I didn't realise at first, it took a few seconds, she was actually on our drive. And I'm watching, thinking, honestly. And then, you know, when you just think, she said, and the winner is Deborah. And I went, and I was like, and then the next thing they all appear through the gate into the garden. Cameraman, Charlotte, Victoria. Yeah. But they lost the signal. I'm proud. I'd like to think that Aaron's proud of the number of people that have been saved in his memory. But I'm not somebody who, I always feel like, I don't want to sound like you're bragging. Like when we first lost Aaron, it's a very dark place. And I knew that, this sounds really probably dramatic, but I knew that in order to survive, I had to do something. So I think doing this, in effect, it's saved me. Having something, you know, to focus on, and something positive in Aaron's memory.
Do you want to tell us all about the gorgeous Otis?
Yeah. Three years ago, the most precious thing came into our lives. Our daughter had a little boy. I was convinced it was going to be a girl. Otis, Aaron offered. He reminds me so much of Aaron. I know he's not Aaron, but he reminds me so much of Aaron. He's very sort of laid back, happy little boy. Yes, and it was very bizarre that he was born the same time, weighing the same as Aaron. He's very blonde, blue-eyed like Aaron. He's just an absolute joy. So, yeah, I'm a bit of a nightmare. Oh, I would drive people up the wall talking about my grandson. I've become one of those people. You know, like sometimes when you meet people, when you've got children and you're like, oh, well, my son can do this and my daughter does this and my son did this. I am now that grandparent. I know pre-Aaron, I'm a different person, I would say. I would say I've always been extremely spiritual. A bit, you know, woo-woo. I'm one of those. The house that we lived in before we moved to Tarpley was never going to be a forever home. It was more that it was easy to get to John Dean's College. And so we knew that we would move, but it was really hard to move from that house because that was where we'd lost Aaron. But when we made the decision to move, we went to look at a house in Tarpley. It was not the house we were intending to buy, but I just had the details in the car. So this house was empty. We were shown around it, just Gary and I at the time. And there was something about this house when I stepped in. I can't explain it. Needed lots of work doing to it. And I could see my husband's face like, oh, I don't need this at my age. So we went home. I told Holly about it. And then Holly was coming home on the Friday and it was a lovely sunny day. I'd taken Holly to see the house with the estate agent. And when we stepped in the door, Holly walked ahead and bent down. What's she doing? And she picked a white feather up off the floor. And we were just like, we need to have this house. Yeah. And that was the reason for buying the house, was the white feather. And we were at home waiting for Gary to come home, thinking, where is he? Got the Prosecco open, where is he? And he was late because he'd been and bought the house based on the feather. A really close friend of mine had a canvas printed of the feather, which sits in my study now. So that's what I mean, I just got this gut feeling when I walked in the house, and then when I saw the feather, that was it. I think I've always been a strong person. If you ask anybody, I think they'd say that, I've always been a strong person. But when we first lost Aaron, I was like, I know I used to say to Gary, I can't do this. I'm not going to get through this. But I don't know, something kicked in along the way. I don't know what it was, but I don't know, I got that strength back. Before we lost Aaron, you know, when you think you've got it all, you know, you've got a husband, you know, I've been married for how many years? 38 years, and had 2, you know, perfect children, you know, had a lovely home, amazing holiday, you know, all those materialistic things. You go to work every day to give your kids everything and to give yourself the best life, the best holidays. And I would say to people that really is not important. It's about the people you surround yourself with. You can't buy your health. The one you can, you know, if we could have bought Aaron's health, you know, we would have given everything up. But that's the one thing you can't buy.